Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host Shwin and this is episode 265. I am joined on a snowy Monday by my co-host Stacy. That is at Stacy Pan 89. Stacy, how are you doing?
Yeah, it's definitely snowy. I think we're a little bit south of you, so more wintry mix, which is honestly way worse.
Yeah,
Just
wintry mix
shitty.
is the worst actually.
But yeah, doing about the same.
Well, I doubt that. But before we get started, I do have to make an announcement that the Strickland has an Instagram, which you can subscribe to. Check that out. That is at thestrict.land on Instagram. Give us a follow there. We're putting out all kinds of new content on there. You can also follow us on YouTube, where you might be watching this podcast. If you are watching this podcast on YouTube, please hit the like button and then hit subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. That would be a big help to us. The Strickland also has a Patreon which you can subscribe to. There are a number of tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to the Strickland mailbag that comes out every other week, hosted by Andrew Steele and Dallas Amico, the Doug bag, as we like to call it. You also get access to the Strickland Discord, where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod, where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful weekly articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits like listening in on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day. Whether you choose to subscribe or not, none of this would be possible without you. So without further ado, let's get started. The Knicks lost their fourth in a row to the Raptors, 125-116. I don't really have anything to say because it's the same exact thing over and over again, and starting to feel a little bit like last year, around the same stretch pre All-Star break when Thibs lost his mind and coached like a fucking moron, which he's kind of doing again. And I know that he was shorthanded yesterday, which makes
He
the
was
failure.
shorthanded in the two areas that killed the Knicks, right? Um, DJ put out DJ Asulo, front of the pod. By the way, shout out to DJ. Congrats if you're listening on the becoming contributor for Knicks Film School. It's really cool. Excited to see even more of the content he's putting out. And if you don't follow DJ, you should. But I think he put out a stat. For all the clamoring about the shooting luck the Raptors had, they shot over 50% from three. The Knicks actually had a higher effective field goal percentage and a higher true shooting percentage by a substantial margin over the Raptors. So they were getting good shots. The problem was two things: they got out rebounded, and they didn't have any deflections. And those are not, I mean, at least the deflections are not a new thing. As DJ mentioned, the Raptors are number one in the league in deflections. Not a surprise given all the length they throw out. And the Knicks are dead last. But if there is a player who is probably the best at generating deflections and not doing things like going under screens against Fred VanVleet, and we can talk about that later. They were missing him, and they were obviously missing their best rebounder in Mitchell Robinson. And me and you have had some back and forth on Mitchell Robinson, and I'd honestly probably call a truce there because I think that I probably maybe overvalue Mitchell Robinson relative to other centers because of how bad the rest of the Knicks defensive. He's the only player that knows how to box out. And if you told me that would be a thing when he was a rookie and he was just fucking awful at it, I would have not believed you. But he's the only one that knows how to box out. And you saw how many times Siakam or Trent or someone would just come in and the Knicks would be focused on the ball and maybe even in good position, and it wouldn't matter because they're not putting a body on a guy. So you missed that for Mitch, and you missed Emmanuel Quickly's event generation. And the other thing was turnovers on the other end, which by default of being a pretty good, competent ball handler, Quickly helps. But he also, he's the only person who knows how to navigate a double team. like like Quickly, like it's not always the ideal outcome, but he'll get it. He'll like dribble out and get it to Sims or whoever, like he'll get the ball there. And I will say that the Raptors are good at trapping. Like they will take away the nearest pass. They will make you execute the most difficult pass, but Quickly is good at buying time. And so this was like the least ideal opponent for the Knicks to have to be down Quickly and Mitch against.
I don't really care about any of that, to be honest. They lost to this team twice with both those guys.
That's
so
true.
that's not an excuse.
It's not an excuse. What I'm saying is that was it's no. My point is not that it's an excuse, and there is one big problem I had with Thibs. In addition to the fact that our scheme on defense, if you're leaving Gary Trent Jr. open 9 times from 3, there's something wrong with the scheme. Let's just put it like that. This is the only team Fred VanVleet has success against. Like we can talk about those things, but I think it should highlight the value that Quickly and Mitch bring. You know, even when Quickly shooting 32% from 3.
But if you still need those values, I'm not saying you, but if people still need those values highlighted, then they're fucking stupid. Like I don't care about that. It's
a lot of people still need Mitch's value.
Yeah, well, they're fucking stupid. Like I don't know what. Like I'm sorry. Like if you want to say Mitch, and I've criticized Mitch plenty, but like if you want to say Mitch has flaws and like we need to eventually upgrade the position and there's things that he does that like yeah, I that there's all we can have all those conversations. But like he's objectively a good player. He does things that we lack without him on the floor, both defensively and on the glass and offensively. I do think he's a better rim runner than Sims, even if Sims is a better screen setter. Those are kind of tied together, but kind of separate.
Sims
Whatever.
is 6'9" on a good day, so
yeah,
that's really
it's just
problem.
different.
Yeah.
But like, I just watched this team. Like, there's just inexcusable shit that's happening. Like, you have okay, so Mitch is out and Quickly's out, right? We're talking about effectively what are two guys of like what's an 9-man rotation, but is in actuality basically like a 6-man rotation. So 2 of your 6 guys are out.
But is that a Thibs thing or is that a front office thing? Because I mean, I think we agree that the like takeaway from Cam just being not playable is that his reps, Thibs, and the front office is at a mutual agreement that he's not going to play, right? Is that fair to say, or do you think that's not the? That's also why I don't like. Everyone, a lot of people tweet at me like, "Why isn't Cam playing? Why isn't Cam playing?"
I don't respond to any of those. So if you're listening to this and you tweet that at me, just know that I'm not going to respond because I literally don't care.
We're both tired of that. Neither of us is that high on Cam. For the same reasons, I'm like not crying my eyes out that we didn't trade for Rui Hachimura. But the point is, like, you're using a roster spot on that. You're using a roster spot on Svi Mikhailuk, who I understand wouldn't have helped our defense yesterday. But if you're in a shootout like the kind of games the Knicks have been in the last couple of games.
Well, if he's not an option, then why is he here at all? Like, if he's literally just no Theo, scenario that
there are players like that on every NBA team, right? That like,
but like you're talking about, you're out 2 guys. You can't even. There's been situations where we've been out guys, and we need somebody to eat minutes. You can't put him in.
That is a failure of the front office. That like, and it's not just 2 guys. You have another backup point guard who you're giving $13 million a year to, and I'm not one of those people that's like Jalen Brunson's making $100 million a year. You get $300 million tied up with Randall, and I'm not one of those, and Brunson and Barrett. I'm not one of those guys, but you have Derrick Rose there. He's not playable. You have Fournier. He's not playable. He played yesterday. I don't want
like the front office is its own thing. We can talk about that later. Like this guy is sitting there.
But that
yesterday.
is hamstringing.
No, it's not him. He's hamstringing himself.
He is also. It can be both. Can be true.
No.
Right?
But we don't need the front office conversation. Can be a separate thing. Like yesterday, you're watching this game. This guy plays Evan Fournier 21 minutes. He played him 21 minutes. He played him 7 minutes and 24 seconds in the fourth quarter while Grimes is just sitting on the bench.
I would imagine we agree on the biggest rotation mistake, right?
Okay,
which is that you got a guy that hit 4 threes in 10 minutes.
Right, but this is my but this is my point. Like he's down 2 guys of his 6-man, the 6 guys that he trusts no matter what on this team. He's down 2 of those guys. And even on that night, in that situation, he can't play the guy who hit 4 threes he can't play more than 11 minutes, Obi Toppin, because Obi can only be a 4. He can only be a 4. And not only can he only be a 4, he can only be a 4 next to a true 5, even if the true 5 is Sims or Hartenstein, neither of whom, despite their efforts, I actually thought Hartenstein, he had a bad last 3 possessions in the fourth quarter. I actually thought he played okay yesterday. But he can't play except for the next to those guys or Mitch. And it's stupid. What is the argument? What coach? Look at this team, okay, and look at who you're playing against. Is there a single other coach in the NBA that would play Evan Fournier 21 minutes over Obi Toppin? No, there's not. He's a bottom 5. No, hold on. He's a bottom 5 coach in the league, considering our situation. He's a bottom 5 coach. What other coach in the league is doing that? Name me one. Maybe Steven Silas because he's fucking awful. No other coach. No,
I mean, maybe the secret to getting a good Frenchman in the draft is playing this Frenchman right now.
Maybe, but we know that this is if this was another coach, I might actually buy into this is some next level tanking thing. But we know it. We know Thibs is not doing that. He's looking. I don't know how there are people who never criticize him and go out of their way to find reasons for why the decision he made was actually fine and there's nothing else you could do and he can't pack anything. And it's what fucking game were you watching yesterday or any day? Evan Fournier, you cannot go. I'm sorry. I tweeted this yesterday and I got a bunch of pushback. There was a bunch of people that pushed back on this because I was like, how does Deuce McBride, who's in the rotation, now because Quickly is out injured, okay, fine. You got to play Evan because you need somebody. But I'm fine with that. My issue is not Evan playing. But how does it go that a guy that's in the rotation plays less than a guy that's out of the rotation because of an injury? And people are like, well, people are just like, oh, well, you don't understand. He's replacing Quickly's minutes. So that I'm like, okay, but no other coach in the league does that. No other coach is going to be like, well,
I think a lot of the people who are agreeing with you in principle on that, but they're just they were making the point that this is Thibs' weird logic. Right?
No, and I understand that, but it's that's the entire point. The logic is not logical. There's no reasoning to it. And it's oh, see, it's a 3. And then I have 3 people oh, aren't you happy you played him over Deuce now? And it's dude, he went 2 for 9. Who cares what, okay, congrats. He made a couple shots. That's the bare minimum.
Way worse defense.
Yeah. And he's terrible in defense. And my thing is I'm not even saying this as oh my God, Deuce needs to play more thing. No, my point is one, if you're going to play Fournier more in this situation where there's an injury, then he should always play more than Deuce. If that is your evaluation as a coach. The second part of it is Deuce is one, he's not hitting shots. And I thought yesterday he played better defensively, but he's going through something on that end. He's just not having an impact. But okay, why can't Obi just take those minutes? Because when we're at full health, okay, when we're fully healthy,
because you're putting Randall or Obi at the 3. That's
right. But my point is that's not a good reason with this roster. This roster, you're playing 2 wings, first of all. Okay, there's only 2 wings that are getting any minutes. RJ and Grimes. And Grimes is you're generously naming him a wing, okay? There's no reason that Obi can't play the 3 because your other option there is Evan. He is better than Evan now. He's more important.
He's a better defender at the 3 than Evan, probably.
He's a better defender than Evan at the 3. He's shooting better than Evan from 3 this year. He's shooting 36.2% from 3.
He's shooting better than Evan 40
on 11 threes per 100 possessions.
I don't think he's a better
on 11 threes per 100 possession. On 11 threes per 100 possessions this year.
That is, for those listening, that's close to Quentin Grimes level.
Yeah, so he's shooting 36.2% from 3. Evan Fournier on 11.6 3-point attempts per 100 possessions is shooting 31%. There's no argument for Evan Fournier, based on their play this year, to ever get more minutes than Obi Toppin in any situation ever. Unless Obi literally gets...
you don't actually think Toppin's a better shooter than Fournier, right? So it'd be based on their career body of work, right?
But that's not how he's determining this shit. We know that. We know that Thibs isn't worried about what Evan Fournier... Oh, well, the long run, Evan's going to turn around. That's not how he operates.
Are you sure? like I think if Evan Fournier is playing, you're thinking of him as a shooter, and like yeah, the guy can shoot. I'm not worried about him shooting 31%.
I mean, I'm pretty worried about it because he's played
Well,
a
he's
bunch.
not good at anything else. That's the issue. And Obi was was generating other stuff too. He was also I liked his effort on defense.
Honestly, is it that unreasonable that Obi Toppin is like a 36% 3-point shooter?
Not 36, no. I think it's unreasonable that Evan Fournier is a 31% 3-point shooter.
No, but Evan Fournier is a career 38% 3-point shooter. So it's not like unreasonable to think Obi's
and Obi does get
in
left
that
open
range
more often than Evan. That should be kind of.
I don't know. They were leaving Evan pretty fucking open yesterday. Like
they're not a good defensive team, but I think in general, like that 36% is probably like I think that those 11 3-point attempts will come down, but also like you will see all the people bitching about why doesn't Obi attack the rim? He's just a stretch four. It's like, well, they're giving him that, and soon they're not going to give him that, and then you'll see a lot. And you had one. He had a beautiful drive and kick to jerk. That was actually honestly the most impressive play from Obi Toppin. I don't know if you remember this play. But
yeah, he dumped it to Sims for a dunk. But
Sims,
like,
yeah.
I'm just like I'm sorry. Like I really don't care about the fucking front office. The front office did fine. The front office fucked up XYZ things. But like their biggest fuck up right now is that they're just accepting this. It's fine. It's fine that Obi's playing 10 minutes. He played 11 minutes. He played actually under 11 minutes last night.
Yeah.
In a game where you're down quickly, you're down Mitch. You get 14 points in 11 minutes. He hits 4 threes in the first quarter.
Well, I mean,
second quarter rather, first half. The Toronto Raptors announcers are sitting there on the broadcast wondering why the hell Obi Toppin isn't in the game. This guy, I'm sorry, Thibs. Like yesterday is among the worst coaching games of his entire time with the Knicks. It was atrocious.
Well, I mean, is there an argument that
no,
with the Knicks being no, with the Knicks being mauled on the glass, that Obi was not a guy who was going to fix that?
You know what?
Because they did have a good offensive game.
You know what? No. Actually, I think that actually makes my point for me. You're getting mauled on the glass. Obi Toppin's not a great rebounder. I agree. Who do you think's a better rebounder at the three? Obi Toppin or Evan Fournier?
It's really neither, to be honest.
It's what do you mean? It's clearly Obi, dude. What the fuck are you talking about?
Obi leaks a lot, and neither of the box. The problem isn't can you jump and get the okay. I'll give it to you. I'll give you the Obi point, but the point is also that nobody on this team boxes out, which might be a Thibs failing on its own. But nobody. There's one player on the Knicks who boxes out. And right now he's injured and tweeting memes of his car or whatever, probably, or retweeting motivational Scott Perry quotes.
Yeah, but here's the thing: like this whole like boxing out thing, and I agree. Nobody on the team boxes out. Go look around the NBA. There's a lot of teams that don't fucking box out. We played one yesterday. The Raptors don't box out. They don't box out. But you know what they do is they have a bunch of athletic dudes, and guess what happens? A bunch of athletic dudes. They might jump really high in the air and go get the ball, even though they're not boxing out. Like. You're not okay. For example, Obi Toppin. Guess who has the third highest defensive rebound percentage on the team?
Obi.
It's Obi. And guess who has the 11th highest defensive rebound percentage?
Is Mitch and Randall number 1 and 2?
No, Randall is Keels is 1, but that doesn't count. Randall is 1, Sims is 2, Obi is 3, Hartenstein is 4.
Mitch is not in one of the top
Mitch is 5.
3.
But this is just raw defensive.
He's the best defensive rebounder.
Okay, right, but this is just raw defensive. My point is, for a center, raw defensive, and even for a 4, raw defensive rebound percentage doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing a great job on the glass. Okay, but at the 3, if you're getting just a bunch of rebounds, you're probably doing something okay.
Well, I guess the question for me is, and the disagreement, I guess, or maybe not disagreement, but for me, I would have rather. It's not so much about playing him or Fournier, even though I did think Fournier played too many minutes. I would have played Obi and Randall at the 4 and 5, like everything we've been screaming.
But my point is, even if Thibs, which is actually somewhat reasonable, if he's like, we just can't like the defensive rebounding gets too compromised. It's not worth the trade off.
But when you're getting killed and dropped by fucking Fred Van Fleet.
But I'm saying I'll grant him that. I will grant him that. Okay, fine. That's even if I grant you that, there's no reason to play Evan Fournier over him. Like there's just none, especially against a team like them. Okay, look at the front courts they were putting out there yesterday. It's like Barnes, Siakam, Boucher, Barnes, Siakam, fucking Precious.
They don't have a real 5.
they don't have a real five, and they don't play like traditional wings.
I mean, they don't have a traditional five. I should say it worked for them, obviously. So that's not
right. They don't have a traditional five, and they don't. The only wing they're actually playing is like Gary Trent Jr. yesterday. Other than that, what wing were they playing? None. It's like Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., Precious, fucking
fuckface
Siakam,
Barnes.
yeah, Scotty Barnes, Boucher, and then random dudes off the bench for a little bit. But like, like Wieskamp or whatever the fuck his name is. Like they're not playing a bunch of dudes out there that you're like, oh man, that's gonna be a huge mismatch for OB3. And like, fuck it, even if it was, what is that not gonna be a mismatch for Evan? It's a joke. I'm sorry. It's a joke that like, and any like, I'm so sick and tired of these people that will go out of their way to defend this shit. Oh, well, it's a good matchup for Evan. Really? You think that's why Thibs did it? Because it's a good matchup for Evan? What does he ever for him? He doesn't view things as situational. We know that. Like, if a guy is situational, that means they're not actually playing. The only reason Evan played is because of an injury. If Quickly was healthy, he doesn't play Evan. He wouldn't have been like, oh, it's a good matchup. Let me get Evan in there. No, he wouldn't have played.
But Quickly is good, but
right. But the point is, like, if it's a good matchup for him, then you can 5 minutes for him. He played fucking RJ 40 minutes yesterday. He played Brunson, God knows how many. Grimes got like you could if you're a coach that thinks that actually cares about situational matchups. And you think this is a good matchup for Evan, you would find a way to get him on the floor for 10, 15 minutes. But Thibs doesn't operate like that, which is fine. But you can't have it both ways. You can't be like, oh, well, Thibs is doing this because it's a good situational matchup versus like then being like, well, he doesn't play this guy because that's just how he does it. It's bullshit. Like everything about that game yesterday is insulting. And I don't understand like what did that benefit? What did that do for us? What does playing Evan Fournier any amount of time in 2023 do for us? He's not good on the court. He doesn't matter to your long-term future. If he has
shooting gravity.
And
as bad as he is on ball, his rotations were better than.
Oh my god, dude! Who cares, bro? What the fuck are you talking about right now? You're talking about
he gets the scheme. Like, well,
who cares?
Are not wrong.
Who gives a shit? Like, honestly,
I'm outlining the rationale, bro. I wanted.
But the rationale sucks. The rationale is fucking stupid. So why are we talking about the rationale? I'm sure that there's rationale for why people vote for Donald Trump. Who gives a shit? Like, those people probably suck, and we shouldn't care what their reasoning is. In fact, their reasoning is dangerous.
There might be Trump supporters who watch this. Shwin.
Good, fuck them. Like, I don't know. Like, I genuinely have no idea. Why are we talking about the rationale? I understand his rationale. There's no questioning what his rationale is. We know it.
Are you accusing me of both sides in this?
Yes, I am, because I don't understand why we're doing this. Like, we don't need to. We know what the rationale is. He tells us the rationale every day. Every decision he makes, we know what the rationale is. Why doesn't he ever play with the traditional five on the floor? Because he thinks that position is all about gotta have a rim protector on the floor, gotta have somebody who's a great offensive rebounder, somebody who makes you put a body on the glass. Like, that is what he wants. He wants one guy on the floor who does that at all times. And even if they can't actually do that, as long as they have the semblance of that, he will accept it, right? Because to me, there's really no discernible difference between playing Randall at the 5 at this point and Hartenstein at the 5. With how we're using our 5s, there's really like Randall is going to be worse in drop than Hartenstein. I doubt it.
Randall's going to brings the ability to pass and short roll and shoot.
Yeah,
Randall doesn't have, or Obi doesn't have.
Right. It just, I
do think Hartenstein is a little underrated as a rim protector, but there was no reason not to. Obi playing 11 minutes yesterday is a joke. It is absolutely abominable. There's one thing that makes me like the guy even more is that we haven't heard a trade. That guy should have demanded a trade a long fucking time ago. You just said it, 36% from 3, jumps out of the gym. He is not. I mean, Rui Hachimura just went for 3 second round picks, right? I would take Obi over Rui. They're a similar type of player, right? You would agree with that, right? They're a similar archetype, like a 4 with athleticism. Obi is way more athletic. I would say a better shooter, and he's like his defense was not good yesterday. No, No one's was, and that was criminal to me. And the thing is, like, so on Tibbs, I do not think it was the worst coach game of Tibbs' career, purely because I think there are games that he has
Oh, I
lost.
didn't think. I don't think it's the worst. I said it's among the worst.
Even if I'm just looking at the Knicks, I did not follow him as closely with Chicago and
I'm
Minnesota.
only talking about the Knicks.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying for those who may be referencing other games, I always thought in Chicago the Knicks would always lose to them in the kind of games we're losing to teams like the Raptors now. Irony's a bitch, isn't it? But the point is that that was just. I think there are other, like, the beginning of the fourth quarter. Obi was on the floor, and it was tied, or no, the Knicks were up going into the fourth quarter, I believe, right? The Knicks
No,
were
it
up
was tied. It was tied. It was tied.
The Knicks took a 2-point lead, I think, immediately to begin the fourth quarter. Um, and then there were a lot of it was a lot of it, and RJ Barrett had a good game. I know I am more negative on RJ Barrett than a lot of people, and I tend to, so I'll credit him with having a really good game yesterday, at least on offense. I think after what he said about Scotty Barnes, I would have liked to see him fucking own him more, but the refs didn't help him, and the refs were pieces of shit yesterday. But the RJ Barrett took it out upon himself to do RJ Barrett things, and it didn't work out, and they found themselves down 11. I'm not putting that on Thibs, but and that's with Obi in the game. But I think the bigger issue was, yeah, like, overall 11 minutes, less than 11 minutes, to your point. That, just for a guy who scored 14 points in a game when you really, really needed, like, I think what you were saying before is, like, you're getting mauled on the glass anyway. And my solution would have been, I'm not a fan of Randall at the 3 or Obi at the 3 as much. but against a team like Toronto, Randall probably should play the 3, right? Like, Randall was probably our most effective defender against Siakam. He was our most effective defender against Scotty Barnes. Um, I think I don't get why Obi played 11 minutes, and I don't get why you. And I think it goes back to your point that, like, this rigidity makes sense. Your rigidity is like, if you're saying that, well, you're getting killed in small ball and you're Doc Rivers and you're refusing to bench Joel Embiid for Montrezl Harrell, that's good rigidity, right? Because you want to keep Joel Embiid in the game. When your rigidity is, I need to keep Evan Fournier, or for me, it was Isaiah Hartenstein in the game, or even Sims. I thought Sims played decent yesterday. Why would he was not having a bigger impact than Obi Toppin. Jericho Sims got posted up by Scotty. Can we talk about how fucking infuriating that is? He got posted up and backed down by Scotty Barnes. That's inexcusable for a center. And it speaks to, you should be playing Obi Toppin more. And that's the thing, right? Like, it's, everyone says, when Thibs gets the talent he needs, then let's judge him, right? Right now, this is a play-in team, or a fringe.
In what industry does that apply, by the way? Like, you can't judge something. Like, is that how, like, Steve Jobs built fucking Apple? It's like, no,
I don't
you
know.
can't.
I just got laid
you
off by
can't.
Mark Zuckerberg, so I don't know if I can.
You can't. You can't judge me. You can't judge me until I build the whole company. Because no, that's not how it works. Like,
Yeah,
if you're in charge,
his weakness.
if you're in charge of something, you have to help guide it get to the end point. And yes, along the way, you will, as a coach, obviously, the goal is, yes, I'm going to coach this team as best I can. And in the meantime, the front office will give me talent. There is not a single argument to be made that Thibs has done the best possible job he can for this season. Not one.
Yeah,
not a single one. Because he started the year playing a rotation, which, when he went away from it, the team immediately improved. That right there, that is 100% proof positive he did not do the best job possible with this team. That's 100% proof positive. The fact that, and these are not changes.
Grimes was hurt, so that's part of it.
But he didn't start playing Grimes, and it was not like Grimes was healthy and all of a sudden Grimes started playing. No, Grimes was sitting there on DNP'd doing nothing for like 4 games.
That was, and that was the same thing with Obi, right?
Like, and he's not. And it wasn't just Grimes not playing.
The front office should control that messaging better. Okay, because is Grimes not healthy? Is Grimes not conditioned? Like, we need more clarity on that. I do think so. And same with Obi, by the way. But
like, the point is like he was playing Fournier and Rose over. He was playing Rose over quickly. He was playing Fournier more minutes than many other players. Like he has no flexibility, and so all he's done is he took out Rose, he took out Fournier, and he replaced them effectively in the rotation. And Cam, he replaced them in the rotation with Grimes and Deuce, and that's it. He didn't actually change how he coached. He just changed who he was coaching, who is in the rotation. That's it. There's no difference in what he does. There's no growth.
And it's the rigidity of it. I mean, you've used the word rigidity more with him, but I think that it's the thing is this, right? Even if you're there's very how often, how many times in the last few years have you seen a team that's just like clear head and shoulders above everybody else? Not since the end of the KD Warriors, right? Which, if that's the answer, that we just need to get him the KD Warriors and he'll win, buddy. You can do better than that as a coach. But the other thing is, like, in most of these series, you're against an evenly matched team, and you have to be creative in how you deploy your players, right? Like the Bucks have a really good center. This is an example. If Thibs was coach of the Bucks, right? The Bucks have a really good center in Brook Lopez who can stretch the floor, and block shots and protect the paint, and right, and he's good enough in drop where you're not. But if they played a team like the Raptors, where as awful as Fred VanVleet has been this year, you can't really play 10 feet in the paint against them on drop. Even if you have a guy like Drew Holiday, would Thibs play Giannis at the 5?
Very sparingly. Like it's not
That's
even.
The,
I don't know why.
That's the thing.
I don't even know why.
Why do you think he's going to be a great? If we get that kind of talent, why do you think he's going to be such a great coach?
There's no reason for it. These people have no reasoning. The reasoning is mostly just like, well, this is the best you can do with what we have. And it would be a bad look for the organization to fire him right now. He made us respectable.
That's the worst fucking. We've already gone through so many bad coaches.
Yeah, and
it's like, honestly, you know what that is? We could say this. It's we can say this. Imagine if you just fucking dated a bunch of shitty people for a long time, and then you're dating someone who's kind of okay and does the bare minimum. Would you just say, well, I can't break up with them even though they suck? Because or they're not. What?
I said people do that though.
People stay in shitty. Yeah, they pop out kids and fucking ruin their lives too. That's the point. Don't ruin Thibs' children's lives.
I just really don't understand. Like, I don't know how you can look at this roster and genuinely feel that he is exploring all possibilities. Like, it's just factually incorrect. Like it really is. I mean, let's be real here. This whole newfound love again that he has for Emmanuel Quickley, like that wasn't there to start the year. Not in the minutes he was giving him. Oh, he values Quickley so much, really, because he was playing him like fucking 22 minutes a night. And I still don't think he might value him, but he values him very, very specifically for a thing. He doesn't trust him to run the offense. He still doesn't. And he's actually, I think, even more so than last year. I don't want to. How do I say this? He's disenfranchised. No, he's just not empowered him to run the off. I think he's empowered him less to run the offense.
Can I say something also? So there's two players in the same mold that I like a lot. There's Emmanuel Quickley, and there's a guy who plays for the Denver Nuggets named Bones Highland, who I really wanted us to draft, even over Quentin Grimes. And there's been people, especially on the Nugget side, who are like, I'll take Bones over Quickley, LOL. If you flipped Bones and Quickley,
the Nuggets would be way better.
The Nuggets would be way better.
And we'd be way worse.
And Bones would be this version of Emmanuel Quickley with worse defense.
Not just
because
that.
because Bones
Thibs would hate him.
Thibs would hate him. Bones is empowered to fucking launch from the logo. How many times? Remember, Quickley used to do that in his freshman season or his rookie season. He used to do it all the fucking time. And like that Clippers game where Paul George afterwards really went out of his way to compliment Quickley. Right? I don't think he was even asked about Quickley, and he complimented him. And you could see that like there was like Quickley hit like his third floater in a row, and like Paul George slammed the ball in frustration. You could tell like that's like the ultimate sign of respect, right? That like this great all NBA defender is like saying that like, yeah, like this dude is, I can't fucking solve this dude. and that's gone from his game. And if Bones wasn't able to do that, he can't do all the fucking other stuff that Quickly can.
Yeah, I'll be honest about the specific logo 3 thing. I tend to think that there is some level of like
Pull-ups and
Thibs.
transition in general.
Yeah, like I think there is some level of like Thibs doesn't want that.
And Malone is a hard ass too, but he
Yeah.
lets Bones do that. He
Yeah,
lets
no,
Murray do
look,
that, obviously.
all
but
I'm saying is like I think there's for sure I do think there's an element of like Thibs doesn't want him doing that. But I also think that like Quickly's still in this weird phase of his and like we'll talk about RJ too later, but like I know like people want these guys to just be stars like, within 2 years, right? And that's why I think like I like to make fun of Jalen Green, but it's also why like the conversation around Jalen Green right now is pretty stupid from what I can tell. And it's like, dude, they're babies. He's a second-year player, right? Quickly's a third-year guy.
the
He's 23.
Rockets are also just a fucking mess.
Right, they're a mess. But like the point is like some guys aren't like the prime of your career is what, like 26 to 30? Like, maybe a little bit later than that, even maybe 27, 31, something.
So we're on the downside, bro?
Right.
Damn.
But it's like, yeah, we're definitely on the downside. But like these guys are still developing. And so with Quickly, I think some of it is definitely Thibs probably doesn't want him taking that shot. But I also think some of it is like he now has a lot of confidence in his game inside the arc. And I think I would actually argue him is maybe even more confident inside the arc than he is taking threes at this point, which is kind of
he's
crazy.
Shooting close to 50% on twos. So
he's shooting over 50%. He's shooting 51.4% on twos this year. But like so I think there's just some of that going on with that too. But I agree. And like, here's a fun comparison. Quickly plays 27 minutes a night. Bones is playing 19.7 minutes a night. Bones is shooting a very tremendous, by the way, 38.9% from three on 14.5 threes per 100 possessions.
He's a fucking shooter.
Now, what do you think Bones' true shooting percentage is?
Like 53?
54.5. Quickly is only shooting 33.2% from three on just 8.7 threes per 100 possessions. What do you think his true shooting is?
54.5 or something.
55.4. Like Quickly's more efficient as a scorer than Bones. He doesn't play on the same usage as Bones, which is also because.
But that's what's more frustrating is like if he had the fucking green light that Bones did, I think his true shooting would be even better.
Well, maybe it would be worse. I don't know, but like we would know, like we would have a better idea. And like my point initially is just like he clearly doesn't view Quickly as capable of running the offense because when he's like the latest thing, right, is he comes in for RJ and then he plays all those minutes of Brunson to close the first quarter. Brunson goes out, then Quickly's on with Deuce, but then RJ comes back in, and then it's most of the time it's an ISO possession for RJ, or if there's nothing getting done for RJ, then it'll be an ISO possession for Quickly. But then we also waste possession, but then we also do this thing where like Deuce brings the ball up, and then it'll go to Quickly, or then it'll go to RJ. So he's not actually empowering him to like run the offense. He's kind of empowering him as a scorer in those situations, but not to actually run the offense. And I just kind of have an issue with that. And I'm sure there'll be people that listen to this and be like, you're nitpicking. He's running the I just don't. I'm sorry. I don't think it's. I think if you go back and watch the games at the end of last season, and then you go and watch and even watch some of the games this year, and then you watch how he's been using Quickly and RJ for that matter the last like 15 games or so, I think there's a very big difference there. But like, again, like at least Quickly's playing a lot though, and the way it happened with RJ getting hurt, do I think that? Yeah, I do. I do think that RJ getting hurt weirdly benefited Quickly's minutes and his standing in the eyes of Thibs. But like the Obi thing is just depressing to me because I don't understand. Like if you're not going to play him more than 11 minutes on a game like last night, then what is the point, man? Just fucking trade the guy. Like really, that
was the best. That was the optimal situation. Yeah, that's what was really frustrating.
And if you're not going to trade him, then you have to go to Thibs and be like, I don't care how you do it. I don't care where those minutes are coming from. He's got to play 20 minutes a night. That's it. There's nothing to negotiate there. If you're the front office and you won't trade Obi right now for a better fit to upgrade the roster, whatever you want to phrase it, like somebody that better fits what Thibs needs, whatever the fuck. Okay, if you're not going to do that, then you have to have the balls to be like, he's got to play 20 minutes a night. And it doesn't matter how. I literally at this point, I don't care how. I don't care if that means that he's playing the 3. I don't care if that means he's going to play the 5. I don't care if that means he's going to play the fucking 1. I don't care. He's got to play 20 minutes a night, and you have got to see what he can do in those minutes every single night. Because you know what? We're not getting shit from the bench as it is. Really, aside from quickly, we're not getting shit from the bench. So I don't want to hear about how like we're trying to win basketball games. Really, were you trying to win basketball games when Evan Fournier was out there fucking fingering his butthole in the fourth quarter? Probably not. Probably not doing a good job of it. Like it's a joke. Like just put the guy out there for 20 minutes a night. The worst thing that's going to happen is what? Like if that means that Deuce McBride doesn't play, fine. That's fine with me. Cool. Deuce can go sit and he can figure out how to shoot like he does in the G League.
At college and everywhere else.
He can figure out how the fuck he's going to do that. I don't really give a shit. They've got to find out what they have in the 8th overall pick they took in 2020. Because what they're doing to him is a disservice. And they're not like you.
Do you think it affects player relationships though? Because
no, I don't. I think that entire thing is stupid as shit.
Like generational wealth being taken away from Obi Toppin and
yeah, like do I feel bad for those guys? Yeah, I do. Like I do feel bad for like when you don't give guys the opportunity to maximize their earnings. But like let's be real. RJ's probably happy with all the minutes he's played in his career here. Randall's very happy with, I'm sure, with this organization. Brunson loves it here. He loves all his family and godfathers and whatever other fucking relatives that he has involved in the team. I'm sure Quickly is plenty happy with his minutes
now.
Yeah, but I'm sure he's plenty happy. Like he's.
We know he wasn't happy before,
right? But he's happy now. That's all that matters. These are not like static things, right? Like Obi might be very unhappy right now, for all we know. Behind all the happy-go-lucky Obi stuff, maybe he's pissed off in the background. I'd be shocked if he's not at least somewhat unhappy about his role in minutes. But you know what? If all of a sudden you're playing 20 minutes every night, guess what? He'd probably be pretty happy. He'd be like, okay, great. This is fucking fantastic. I get to play every night. I get 20 minutes. I get 10 minutes each half. I get to actually show what I'm doing. I get to get into a rhythm. Like, I'm sure he'd be happy. Like, these are not permanent a state of affairs, right? Like, Quickly was probably unhappy to start the year. Now he's probably happy. Mitchell Robinson probably was unhappy at various points during his time in New York because he didn't feel valued. And then he got a contract that I'm sure he's fucking thrilled now. Like, things change. Things are, they're always fluid. So I don't think that's a major issue. And to be honest, like the Cam thing, like he's probably just not playing like we talked about because they have an agreement with his agents to fucking move him as soon as they get a deal that like makes sense. So I'm not that worried about that. Look, the Obi thing is just really, I don't know. That game yesterday, maybe because I had to watch like the dumbest 3 hours of football I've watched maybe in my entire life. Actually, no, that's not true. But it was pretty miserable 3 hours. And then I
worse than TCU Michigan. I guess you care about the Bills more, but
it definitely was much worse than that. But like to go from that and then immediately flip the Knicks game, and it's like again, it's not the winning and losing that bothers me. It's just fucking try something different, man. Like Mitch is not out there. And that sucks, and I get that. And, like, I understand that you love a specific defensive scheme that this roster and it is probably suited for best, and more specifically that, like, Mitch is absolutely critical to. But, like, he's not there. So you've got to figure it out. And, like, you want to call this guy defensive mastermind, defensive guru, whatever the fuck you want to call him.
Yeah, 139 against, who was it we played before Toronto? I don't fucking know anymore.
Atlanta.
At 139 against Atlanta.
116 against the Wizards, 123 against Toronto in overtime before that, and then 125 yesterday in regulation against Toronto. So it's a pretty bad defensive stretch. And 2 of those games, at least 1.5 of those games, I should say, or Mitch 1.25 of those games, Mitch played. So, like at some point, if you're a defensive mastermind, a defensive guru, tactician, whatever the fuck you want to call it, do I expect the defense to be as good without Mitchell Robinson? Absolutely not. I'm not a moron. I get like you're just not going to be as good defensively without it. The guy's a very good defensive player. And especially yesterday without Quickly, it's going to hurt even more, right? Because Quickly is probably your second best defensive player on aggregate this year. You've got to find a way to get manufacture stops. Like this is so like great defensive court. Like Mike Tomlin is probably one of the great defensive coaches in football.
Great performance in love and
Yeah.
basketball too, by the way.
Yes, very good one. But he's probably the best, or one of the best anyway, of all time, and certainly in this generation. That guy, no matter how many injuries the Steelers have every year, will just find a way to fucking just do all kinds of fuckery to somehow manufacture like a top 10 defense and win 9 games and usually sneak into the playoffs, right? Like no matter how many injuries they have, no matter how washed Big Ben is, no matter if they have fucking,
Kenny Pickett.
Kenny Pickett or fucking, what's the other guy? I can't think of his name right now. The Bears guy, Trubisky back there. Like it doesn't matter, right? He just finds a way. And I'm not saying Thibs has to win, he should be winning at the same rate. No, but you got to find ways to get wins. You have to find ways to get wins, and specifically,
and every playoff team has to go through that. By the way, right?
Yeah,
Atlanta was missing Trae Young. Atlanta was missing, or not Trae. They were missing Murray. Every team goes through this, right? Milwaukee's been without Chris Middleton for the whole fucking year, basically.
And they've missed Giannis a bunch of games recently.
Yeah, so like every team goes through this and has to find ways to deal with it. So that's not an excuse, really.
And here's okay. So it's funny you brought that up. Actually, reminds me of something I wanted to bring up. Okay, these are okay. I'm just gonna list this off by defensive rating. The Knicks right now ranked 13th in the NBA. They're tied with the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have missed Rudy Gobert for a shit ton of games this year, actually, and Karl-Anthony Towns, which might help their defense actually. But they're tied for 13th in defensive rating in the NBA. Okay, I'm gonna just list the 12 teams ahead of them in order from 12 to 1. All right. Chicago Bulls 113.1 defensive rating. Phoenix Suns.
The Chicago Bulls.
Yep.
Who are starting Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Nikola Vucevic have a higher defensive rating than the supposed defensive-minded Knicks.
Yep.
Just wanted to emphasize that.
Yep. Phoenix Suns 11. 112.6 defensive rating. They have missed Devin Booker for a bunch of time. They've missed Chris Paul for a bunch of time. They've missed fucking Cam Johnson for a bunch of that time. That's a lot. And they're still ahead of the Knicks. Clippers, who are basically just God knows what lineup they're putting out every game.
The Los Angeles load management. You might as well call it that. Right?
112 defensive rating. Oklahoma City Thunder, probably the one team on here who one is surprising just as a season, like their season performance. But
that is playing for Victor Wembanyama at some point.
Yeah, but they also have been relatively healthy this year, which is funny. But they have a 111.7 defensive rating. They rank 9th. Pelicans 8th, 111.4. They have missed Zion and Ingram, which probably helps their defense, to be fair. Brooklyn Nets 7th, 111.4. Miami Heat 111, number 6. Boston Celtics, who missed Robert Williams for a shit ton of the season, 110.8. Philadelphia 76ers, 110.8. They're the 4th. Milwaukee Bucks,
starting James Harden and Tobias Harris, by the way.
And Tyrese Maxey for a lot of the season, who is not a good defender at all. Milwaukee Bucks, 3rd, 110.3 defensive rating. Cleveland Cavaliers, who have had Garland miss a bunch of time, and Mobley miss a bunch of time.
That probably helps the team.
Yeah, it probably does. And Allen miss a bunch of time. And who play Kevin Love a shit ton of minutes. Like, who have zero wing, like probably have worse wing depth than the Knicks. 109.7 defensive rating. Memphis Grizzlies, 109.2 defensive rating. They missed Jaren Jackson to start the year. Their defense wasn't as good, but now they're playing at an elite level. Like, my point isn't that the Knicks should be better than all these teams on defense, but like, you can't tell me that all those teams, most of those teams have had to deal with significant injuries for much longer than the Knicks have, and ones that hurt them on the defensive end, right? Like, the Knicks only just lost Mitch. Like he played most of the season before this.
Well, I mean, who would you say the second best defender is on the Knicks?
Quickly.
Yeah, they missed him yesterday, right? So.
Right, but that's the first game he's missed all year.
Yeah, no, I mean, but that's kind of the thing is this, and that goes back to if the Knicks when's the last time you saw a playoff series beyond the first round where everyone is healthy?
Yeah, it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. And you need to be able to be creative in those situations. And Thibs sometimes has gotten creative, but if there's just taboos, he views playing Obi or Randall at the 3 as like, or playing them together at the 5 the same way like Indian parents view a kid not being a doctor or an engineer, right? Like it's just fucking, it's nuts. Like it's unacceptable. And that's the point I was making is like eventually if he has that roster where you're like, look, we are a contender, all right? Like, not the situation where like, well, if we play Boston, Tatum and Brown are players that are better than everyone else on our roster. It's a situation where we have the guns to go against these guys. The kind of situation you're going to see, in the playoffs in the NFL. You're seeing Eagles, Niners. I am 100% going to judge our coach on the fact that I think the 49ers are a great team, but I think that the Eagles have the talent to win that. I think they have the talent to beat the Chiefs. And it comes, and like they are going to be judged on, can you get creative when the skills are not in your I mean, I'm not diminishing, like it still takes skill even if you have a talent advantage. In at this level, even a small talent advantage can be negated by bad coaching, right? So being able to exploit that is important. But when it's even, that's when it makes the most difference overall. I mean, the Spurs won 5 titles. They weren't always the most talented team. I don't think they were better than the Heat in 2014, and that was probably one of Pop's best team, and he dominated them. But the other team had LeBron fucking James and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, and he was able to, and he outcoached a hell of a coach in Eric Spoelstra. You need to be able to, so like if that's the end game with this Thibs thing, that like one day he'll have the talent and then we can judge him. No, because like those things you can extrapolate now and say, when he's shorthanded now, can he win a game against, by the way, a worse team in the Toronto Raptors? He couldn't. And why would that give me confidence that, if they were to get Jalen Brown or something, or Tatum or something, like that he would be able to creative enough that would, that he could out scheme Milwaukee or out scheme one of those teams. There's no confidence there. Absolutely. So then
he lost a play. He got out schemed. He consistently gets out schemed and outworked by Nate McMillan. So like that says it all to me.
Yeah, and I mean, in Chicago, I think the playoff series he showed out the best in was when he was missing a bunch of dudes, but it's not happening right now. I do want to talk a little bit about why you mentioned the bench. What are your thoughts on Deuce McBride right now? Do you think he needs to sit? Do you think he needs G League reps? Because I know he's kind of become a little bit of a pariah almost on the Knicks fan base.
Don't want to Deuce, right?
Yeah.
I don't really care. I just keep putting him out there. I'd actually put him
Are
out
you
there.
concerned at all about his long-term future? I mean, if you compare him to a guy like Frank, who obviously, I think he is further along, or I'm more confident than I was in Frank, but
I mean, is it just? I mean, I just keep putting him out there. Like, and if anything, I'd be like I didn't mind how he played yesterday. Thought it was okay. Like, I know he went 0 3 from the field. He didn't hesitate on any shots yesterday. Both threes he took are ones that you want him to take. And the midi pull up he took, maybe he should have kicked that out. But I don't hate him taking that shot. Like, I want him to shoot. I want him to keep looking for a shot. But like, that's just, I don't know. I don't really know what else to say. Like, because right now you need guys to eat some minutes, and I'd rather have him eat minutes than Evan Fournier. I'd rather have him eat minutes than Derrick Rose, and it's really as simple as that for me. And like, if we're gonna go into a world where we don't even want him,
but I think we don't. It's not. That's not the only conversation. It's like, like, what do you think? Do you think he needs to change his approach? Do you think he needs to?
I think he's just got to make shots. Like, I don't know what that means. Like, when I watch him shoot, it doesn't look like his shot is broken or anything. It doesn't look like that. It just looks like he's missing, and he looks like, actually, I think the last 2 or 3 games, I feel better about it because he's just pulling the trigger. He's not hesitating as much, which is usually the biggest issue. He's got to, like, I mean, anytime he puts the ball on the floor right now, it feels like he's thinking way too hard. So that's its own thing. But like, just shooting, I mean, like, if you want what I think we should do with him, he should never bring the ball up the floor. and I don't think he ever needs to, considering the lineups he plays in. And all I'd want him doing is waiting on the second side of actions and either shoot a three, attack a closeout, or swing it. Like, I don't want him doing anything else. I basically want him to do what we have like Grimes doing the starting lineup, and I'd be like, I'm perfectly okay with that. I don't want him. I don't want him dribbling the ball up the floor and having to set up the offense. I don't want him to think about any of that shit. I want him to just clear mind, second side actions, spot up. If you can attack a closeout, great. If you get it open for a three, pull the trigger. If neither of those is available, move the ball. That's it. I don't think it needs to be complicated for him. And if anything, I would try to avoid making
I mean,
it
I think it
complicated at
does
all.
bother me a little bit that he's just allergic to the paint. Like, there's been lots of times where he just gets a step on his defender, and then he just doesn't go anywhere, and then that hurts your shooting too, right? That affects a lot of things. And I do think he needs to be stopped being allergic to the paint. I thought his defense was actually much better yesterday. Another reason I would have played him over Evan Fournier is he was the only defender that didn't just get cooked by Fred Van Fleet in 2023. So I think that he's catching a lot of hate, but I think like I'm with you. Like I saw the worst shooter I've ever seen play point guard for the Knicks have to start over Emmanuel quickly for a year, and they got the fourth seed. So if that was okay, I think it's okay to play Deuce, 10, 15 minutes a game. So I do agree with what you were saying before that, yeah, if he's on the floor with Quickly should very much be the point guard.
Yeah, and look, this is probably this is my biggest pet peeve with Thibs in general this year, and especially lately. He's got three guys that he absolutely trusts to create shots, right? Brunson, Randall, RJ. I think that's fair to say. He like semi trusts Quickly, but it's not at the same level those three guys.
I would add Mitch in the four, but yeah.
As somebody he trusts to create shots.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, look, I know Mitch has put the ball on the deck a few times, but
you clearly don't spend it. You touted the Strickland's Instagram page, bro. You got to spend more time on Instagram. That's where the Mitchell Robinson creation comes from.
But like, it's so I think those three guys are like the ones he trusts to create. You should be able to have two of those three guys on the floor at all times. Like, there's really no reason not to.
At least one, but yeah.
I just think I think it should just be two at all times. I mean, he has one at all times for sure. I think you can have two.
When it's RJ and Randall without Brunson, I'm a little bit. Although we should talk about it too. Brunson's passing has been fucking terrible the last few games.
Yeah. Well, anyway. I actually like Quickly with those guys.
Quickly with anyone, man. Like the dude plays well with anyone, but
yeah, I mean, but I think he actually. It's funny because when he plays with them without Brunson, I think he does a good job of just like getting them organized. And even if the play is ultimately to just get them some type of favorable ISO or an action, like in RJ's case, set up like a pistol action for him, he does that, I think, better than Brunson. Brunson's pretty like, he's kind of like, he's very improvisational. So I actually think a lot of times it's hard to play with him in the sense of like, you're not quite sure what he's going to do. By the way, Quickly, RJ, Randall. Hold on, let me take Brunson in. I want to see what these minutes look like. So Quickly, Randall, RJ, without Brunson on the floor. They've only played 72 minutes this year. They have a plus 18.49 net rating. The funniest thing about this is that they're actually only shooting 28.81% from three in those minutes. Granted, opponents are only shooting 22% from three. I just think that's funny that they're actually been that good. But like, my point is more just I just think like this is what I would prefer to be the rotations is I would have Quickly come in for Brunson as the first sub. Then I would have Grimes go out for Deuce at some point towards the end of the first quarter. And then the first sub to start the second quarter. And then I would have Obi come in for Randall at some point, probably for the last minute or two of the first quarter. Then I would bring Brunson back in for, the start of the second quarter, probably for Deuce. And if you're gonna play Deuce 10 minutes, I would rather it be at the end of the first and at the end of the third than at the start of the second and the start of the fourth, because especially that start of the fourth period tends to kill us, and that's usually when we have Quickly, RJ, Deuce, Obi, Hartenstein, and I don't know. It feels like we're always stuck a little bit offensively in that moment for whatever reason, unless Quickly's got it going, which he has, to be fair, lately. I understand it's not easy to do this stuff, like stagger, so you have two of the three guys on the floor at all times. There's just too many stretches to start the second and fourth quarter where we don't have two of those guys, and I don't really understand it, because I think that's a stretch, especially that fourth quarter one where you want those guys on the floor. It worked better when our bench was, the first year, right, with Thibs, when we had Burks and Rose and Quickly, that you could get away with having a super bench heavy lineup to start the fourth quarter, because arguably two of those guys were our best shot creators that year. But it's not the same, right? Deuce obviously doesn't have that confidence, and I don't know. The Quickly RJ minutes lately, especially with the bench, has been off. I don't know who that's on. I don't even know if that's on Thibs necessarily. It just feels weird. I wonder if there's something going on with they don't work well with Hartenstein. I don't know, but it's also because they've been playing slower before the last couple of games. I think they need to play fast. If they play fast, those guys can get into the offense more. But either way, I just think you can play two of those three guys for probably closer to 42 minutes a night, at all times. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of issues with the rotations. Kind of moving. So, if Mitch is going to be out for an extended period of time, do you think, even if it involves firing Thibs, do you think the front office should be pushing for a playoff spot? Do you think we should be playing one Frenchman more in order to set our sights on another intriguing freshman who we could add to the team? Preferably this Frenchman, sorry, who would also be a freshman next year, to the team in the draft next year. What kind of are your thoughts moving forward? Because, the fact is they're going to play a lot better teams than the Raptors. And as much as we can blame Thibs for yesterday, the reality is they are shorthanded and depleted. And, Cam isn't going to change that. More Deuce minutes are going to change that. Benching Fournier isn't going to change that. So, is there, I don't know if I would use the word tank, but is there a pivot in terms of the priorities of the front office? Do you think if they miss Mitch for a month, then the front office, it seems like the front office was held to the standard of you have to make the playoffs, period. Do you think they should be held to that now? Or do you think there's, and also does that impact, if you do try to trade for a guy like Gary Trent Jr., Eric Gordon, or someone that would have been, the guy to help with the playoff push, does that change now with Mitch out for an extended period of time during a tough stretch, which could, pretty much submarine the Knicks' hopes of certainly being in the 6th seed, but maybe even the play-in,
right? Good question, and I'm going to answer that. But first, 4 NFL teams, unfortunately not mine, 2 conference championship games, and only a few more shots to win big on the playoffs with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Counting down to Super Bowl 57, new customers can bet just $5 and get 200 in free bets instantly. Not a new customer? You can feel the conference championship thrills with stepped-up same-game parlays. Take your shot at an even bigger NFL payout and boost your winnings with each leg. You add up to 100%. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code TVPN. New customers can bet $5 on the conference championships and get 200 in free bets instantly. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code TBPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. I think
Fly Eagles fly, baby. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that must be nice. I don't know what should the front office? I don't know. I mean, the front office probably has
It's not
some
even
play
just the
up.
front office, but what should the Knicks' goals be, right?
I mean, I think the goal should be exactly what they've been: play your young guys a lot and try to see what happens.
To the extent that they should maybe trade for a guy like Gary Trent Jr. or Eric Gordon, or one of
I
these
mean,
guys, or
Gordon,
giving
I
them an
would
asset.
be fine with, who's like a low minute. Like, he's probably not going to run too much. Apparently, Houston is steadfast. They want a first round pick for him, which obviously don't do that. Um, but like, if you can get him for Cam and a second round pick, sure, I don't mind. Cam Rose expiring and a second round pick for Eric Gordon, be my guest. That's fine with me. But like, if you're not going to make any moves, which, other than like, let's say the only move you're going to make is trade Cam for like an expiring and second round picks or something. Okay, then that's fine. Again, like then my only request, however you want to put it, is play Obi 20 minutes a night. That's it. Other than that, I'm happy. I'm a happy
But do
camper.
you think succeed at all costs, which I think was probably the goal before Mitch got hurt, is still a reasonable goal, or do you think they should? I mean, do you think they should be shifting their priorities away from wins more towards
Well, I
an
don't. I mean,
asset-centric
how do you?
focus?
I don't see how you. There's no way to shift, like to not try to win with this team. Is the way I look at it. Like, your young guys that you would want to play if you're doing like a lean into the tank type thing are probably too good to tank. So, there's really no point to me in whether they should tank or not tank. Like, I mean, if you want to say they should play Brunson only like 34 minutes a night and Randall 32 minutes a night and just live with the results, like, yeah, I tend to agree with that, if they want to cut down those guys' minutes. But like, I don't know how much that really moves the baseline. And I don't even know if that necessarily makes it worse. It might actually make it better because they might be less gassed at the end of games. So I don't know. I don't think much has changed for the front office in terms of what their goals should be.
If the front office misses the play, like, it is very conceivable, if not likely. And for those who are going to bring this back up and say you gave up on the Knicks, I'm not doing that. But if you look at their schedule coming up, you got the Cavs tomorrow. I don't know who is going to deal with that front line, but it's certainly not the players who've been playing. They're going against, potentially the prohibitive finals favorite in the Celtics. 2 days after that in Boston. They have a home game at the Barclays Center on Saturday, and it will be a home game probably. But they have never beaten the Nets in the Thibs era, even when the Nets have been depleted. They come home to face a Lakers team that's playing really well. It appears that there's a chance that could be a chance for LeBron to set the scoring record. They get the Heat at home, another tough team. Clippers at home, Sixers at home. Then they go to Orlando, which is really the only easy game in the stretch. Then they come home. Then they go to Philadelphia, which is a healthy and an improving team. This is a stretch where then they get the Nets again at home, and the last game before the All-Star break is on the road in Atlanta. This is a game. This is a stretch of like 9, 10, 11 games where they might win only 2 or 3. Um, you know, the Knicks will probably. I mean, we can probably agree that this front office is never going to tank, right? But if they were to miss the playoffs and get a high draft pick, do you think that would put their jobs in jeopardy? You're on mute, I think. By the way, sorry.
I think it just depends on how you miss the playoffs. So if they go 40, let's say they finish 41-41 and they lose in the play-in, I think they're probably safe.
Yeah, but I would rather be in the Wembanyama sweepstakes than do that.
Well, you'd be in the Wembanyama sweepstakes if you lose
By
the
like
play-in.
1%. I'm talking about like a legitimate chance.
What
Or like the
you're
chance for the top
you're already
two.
25-23. Like, how are you getting into the Wemby stakes? Like,
By like losing
so
much.
you're gonna shut down Randall? You're gonna shut down Brunson? Is that like, what's the plan here to do this?
Yeah, but then I don't think they should get fired even if no matter what. I don't even think you should get fired if the team does lose a lot of games playing them.
I mean,
Because like, what are we gonna say? Like they were wrong to get Jalen Brunson? I don't think anyone's gonna say that. Like I don't see how they're like it's weird because the team is underachieving right now and there's a good chance that they don't make the playoffs, but is this front office safe for this year?
For this year,
Yeah.
yeah, I would definitely say they're
Like
safe for
I
the next year.
can't think of a scenario in which they get fired.
I mean, I think they could get fired at the end of the year.
But why? Like if they miss the playoffs, the Mitch is I think a big enough excuse where they can say no. I do think there
I
might
would
be a
if
situation where
if they
Tibbs
miss the
doesn't get
if they miss the playoffs because Mitch was out for 3 weeks, I would fire them if they were unwilling to move on from Tibbs at that point.
so it's Tibbs. That's the sticking.
Well, no, it's like if you this is okay. The way I view it is this. Let's say Mitch is out, he's getting reevaluated in 3 weeks. Let's say he actually misses a month. Okay, we'll just say 4 weeks. If you go from they were 23 and or 25 and
He gets revalidated right at All-Star break, so it probably comes back after the All-Star
yeah.
break.
So whatever. They were 25 and 21 basically when he gets hurt, right? If you go from that to we're hanging on by a thread for the last play-in spot, I think that's pretty damning on somebody. Because as good as Mitch is, if you can't find a way to get through a few weeks without him, a month without him, that's unacceptable to me. Either and that's at that point, like it's either on Tibbs or it's on all of them. And if they don't want to pin it on Tibbs, then it's on all of them. That's how I feel about it. Like you can't we can't just keep saying, well, Mitch was hurt and this. Yeah, injuries happen. Like I mean, look, and to Tibbs' credit, when Mitch got hurt in 2020, 2021, we were able to hold the fort. We actually went on our best run that season without him. And that's obviously not because Mitch was not important or good to that team, but there are ways. You can find a way to figure this shit out. And yes, our bench was better. We had more depth, but I would say our top end talent was nowhere near as good. I think Julius is better this year than he was that year. I think Brunson is better, by far better than anybody else we had on that roster that year. I think RJ is clearly better than he was that year. Quickly is better than he was that year. Like, like I don't. Grimes is better. He's as good at least as Bullock, in my opinion. I don't really.
God, if that's even a conversation, that's
right. And like, so yeah, you don't have Rose from that year. You don't have Burks. You don't have the depth, right? But like, you still got some good pieces, and you got better top end talent. So, and I know the conference is better and the league is better, but like your talent is also better. So, I don't know. Like, it has to be on somebody. So if they don't want to put it on Tibbs, which is, by the way, I think that'd be fine if they don't want to put it on Tibbs because, whatever, you don't want to pin it on a guy, fine. But guess what? Then it's on all of you. And I just don't see that happening. I think if they miss the playoffs entirely this year, I think that would probably cost Tibbs his job. That's what I think. I don't know if that's.
But not Leon's job.
Again, it just depends how. If they just melt down from here, I think Dolan would probably clean house.
Even if it gets them like the first overall pick.
Yeah, but he doesn't. But he doesn't need
they traded out of Wemby.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He doesn't need them to draft Victor Wembanyama. You know what I mean? Like the pick at that point is who's ever. I mean, and think of it this way: you can clean house, but like you could be like Leon, you're gone. Tibbs, you're gone. Wes, you're gone. But you could keep Barron. You can keep Perry. You can keep those guys. Like there's no.
I don't know if you want to keep Scott Perry, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying like these are all guys you keep. So just because you're cleaning house at the top doesn't mean everybody goes. But I don't think I just don't see how if they just melt down from here, you can be like, well, it's not what you could do. I mean, at that point, if you melt down from here, that would really drive home how some of these vets. Like, I'm not somebody that kills them for it because I just think like sometimes you fuck up and you have to accept it, and they've done that and they've pivoted and found a way to make all that into Brunson and shit like that. But like, if you're not getting anything out of Rose, which is $14.5 million, if you're not getting anything out of Fournier, which is $18 million, if Hartenstein is continuing to play like a pumpkin, that's $9.5 million. You're talking about $41+ million that you paid for this year and got fucking shitty negative ROI on, right? Like your return of investment, there's garbage. So if you're an owner, you'd be like, well, why the fuck am I spending this money? If these guys, like, you told me we're going to make the playoffs, and I understand injuries happen, but then how come these guys can't help us make the playoffs? Why are they doing absolutely nothing? And so, like, if anything, this is why I think they need to make a move at the deadline. And like, you mentioned Gary Trent Jr. Like, there's a lot of schools of thought on Gary Trent Jr. and should they go for him?
If he
And
got to play against the Knicks every game, he's probably a max player, right? So
yeah, probably. I mean, he's obviously a good 3-point shooter. He's shot 38.5% for his career. He's at 36.7 this
solid
year.
athlete. Threw one down on Sims yesterday, which
Yeah, that was
honestly
an
solid.
impressive take. He's averaging 18.7 points per game. He is at 57.5 true shooting. He's been like a middling efficiency guy, 55 for his career. So there's a little bit of Courtney Lee to him. But he's 24 years old. Like, I don't know. Like, to me, if you, I'm not sure what their plans are. My guess, I'll just put my cards on the table. My guess is I think that their plan or goal anyway is to add at least 2 rotation guys into the mix moving into end of the season into next year. Be it via the draft or the mid-level exception, whatever. They're going to have 2 guys that they need. I think they need to add 2 rotation guys. I think they know that. I think they also know that they probably need to add wings. And then I think the goal is play that out next year and then make a big trade for a star in 2024. That's what I think their plan is. And also to try to keep your cap space somewhat clean for 2024. That's my guess. Now, should they be willing to deviate from that? I think they should. I think a guy like Gary Trent Jr. is interesting. Like, you'd have to have a pretty decent idea of what contract he's looking for because he's going to be a free agent this upcoming offseason. But like, I think there's a decent player in there. He does the things that the Knicks need, like, more of, right? He's a really good 3-point shooter, or at least a solid one. He's somebody I'd be pretty interested in. And if you can keep him at a reasonable price point, let's say you're talking about Kevin Herter money or something like that, which is like 4 years, 60 million for him. 4 years, 70 maybe. Like,
inflation, not in this economy, but but yeah, I think
we'll see. But I mean, something in that range, like, I would be okay with that. Would they? I don't know. And the thing, I just think that, like, if you can turn one of your protected first and Evan Fournier into that, you should probably go ahead and do it. And be willing to pay a price to keep him. Again, you'd have to know before you make the deal, because you would not. You just have to somehow talk to his agent, maybe, and get an idea of what he's looking for, even though tampering doesn't exist in the NBA.
Except if you're the free agent's dad, then that's tampering.
Right. But like, if you can get an idea of what he's looking for and you're comfortable with that, I think that's a pretty interesting guy to go after. I've also advocated, like, hey, trade for Gordon Hayward. I imagine, I have no intel, or
especially if you can get McDaniels attached to that. That would
yeah,
be kind of
maybe.
the dream, yeah.
But like, can you do Rose and Fournier and a protected first or not a protected first? Really, I would just offer those guys straight up for Hayward, because it's like, hey, dude, do you want to just get off some of that money and get a guy that Steve Clifford likes and has coached before? Like, is that okay? Because who the fuck is really giving up value for Gordon Hayward at this point? I don't know. But like, there's guys out there they should definitely look at and kick the tires on. But like, what is the right price for any of this stuff is a little bit harder to figure out. Caruso is obviously another one. His usage is super low, but I do think there's value in playing him with Quickly and making Quickly more of an off-ball guy and let him focus on scoring a little bit more than he has to right now. So I don't know. There's ways they can go. I think they definitely need to make a move, though. They have to, because this is not sustainable what Thibs has them doing. And if they're attached to Thibs, then it's on them to get him somebody that can help lighten the load that he's putting on a lot of these dudes.
On the Gary Trent Jr. piece specifically, so obviously friend of the pod, contributor to Strickland, Jeremy Cohen, posted a tweet today, which there was a good amount of interaction on. But his essential theory is that the front office is going to be focusing on 2024 free agency. So he said that the targets would be players that would be free agents in 2024, which would outlaw or not outlaw. It would rule out a guy like Gary Trent Jr. from being in that consideration. How much credence do you put in? I mean, I'm not saying how much credence do you put in Jeremy, because I think that he's probably right about the. But do you think that is a big factor in the Knicks front office is thinking? That 2024 free agency, and because I think it's tough to tell for a lot of fans. Like, you play for now, you play for the future, and you have an eye on the future. What is kind of your impression on how they might be weighing that in their acquisition strategy?
I mean, I agree with him. I think that's probably what they're going to do. I just don't think they should.
To the extent that would rule out, like, do you think they would pass on a guy like Gary Trent Jr. if it cost, let's say, just the Dallas pick and like Cam and filler? Do you think they would be that willing to say that no, we want 2024, we're not going to commit to him for that?
I mean, what is it? It's just Cam. When you say Cam and filler, like no picks involved.
Fournier, Rose, something like that. Those kind of nothing we're gonna miss. Right? Maybe more seconds. I don't know, but just the core of the deal being a first round. Like one of the first round protected picks, probably Dallas.
Yeah, I think they probably would say no to that.
The Knicks or the Raptors.
Well,
the Raptors, I think would. The Raptors would probably get better offers than that, but do you think the Knicks would say no?
I think they would say no. Like I don't. It's impossible. Like the thing is, if they want to keep 2024 cap space open, and that's the most important thing for them, then they would say no, because Gary Trent Jr. is going to get paid this summer.
But they also want to make the playoffs, and he would move the needle there, right?
I think he would, but I also think they probably would bet that they can find value for cheaper elsewhere. Like that. I think they're trying to find a Derrick Rose type of trade, effectively.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't know if that gets it done, right, for the playoffs right now, especially if they're missing so much. And as we've seen with a lot of their pieces, a friend of the pod, again, Frank Barrett, had a good tweet today, and he basically, it was too real. It was like basically that they, Grayson Allen has been mentioned. We can talk about him as a target.
I would like them to add Grayson Allen, by the way. Depending on the
Grayson Allen,
price.
what's going to happen, right? They put him in on the bench in like a secondary ball handler type of role and a standstill shooter. Or so he comes in, few games, he shoots the lights out. Everyone's like, see, this is what happens when you get a real shooter. But then he's used as a standstill shooter and a secondary ball handler. It doesn't work out. He gets relegated to the bench. And everyone's like, he was the wrong guy to go after. And I mean, I think that was an implicit Thibs critique. Do you not worry about that kind of being the thing with any of these guys, for that matter?
I don't think so. I think, again, so if they don't get, let's say they don't do anything. Let's just say they literally don't do anything. I still think this roster should be finishing in the play-in. And
well, yeah, I mean the East, the bottom of the East. I mean they shouldn't be finishing beyond the Wizards. So
yeah, I mean we laughed, but the Wizards also fucking took us to Pound Town last week.
They got rid of Rui Hachimura, man. That guy would have changed the Knicks' whole trajectory. They got rid of him.
It's so funny because it's like, where's Rui gonna play? We already can't play Obi, so where the fuck are we gonna trade?
Well, I asked my friend who's a Lakers fan, and I was like, "Isn't Rui just Thomas Bryant? Like, what is he giving that Thomas Bryant doesn't?" And then he was like, "Well, there's untapped wing defense, maybe, but."
I mean, the Lakers just need dudes. They just need fucking bodies. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're going to be pretty careful. They've not shown the willingness to overpay for stuff like this. They've been pretty stingy with trading out picks. I do think they would trade out a pick at a certain point, but like me personally, I think it's probably worth it to do it for Gary Trent Jr. I like that he's only 24 years old. I think that You're adding a guy who could be useful salary filler in a trade down the line, but also fits in with kind of like what your team is currently. But he's like a veteran, like he's like a young veteran, right? So, I know that he's not a perfect player. He's got issues defensively, and he doesn't pass the ball very well. But that would fit in perfectly with the Knicks. But like, yeah, I mean, he's a decent steals guy. He's okay. He's 2.7 steal percentage this year. I think he's like an okay defender, not a great one, maybe not even a good one, but an okay one. He's kind of a black hole at times offensively, but I do think the Knicks really could use somebody like him that seems pretty comfortable pulling up. He definitely has confidence taking any shot. Like, I love Grimes. Grimes hasn't shown any consistency or ability yet to be a pull-up mid-range guy to any degree. And he doesn't, or at least he hasn't shown yet that he's going to take a bunch of pull-up threes. I do think he has that ability. He just hasn't done it yet. But, like, I do think Gary Trent has that kind of confidence in himself. There's a little bit of J.R. Smith to Gary Trent, which I think is good.
Yeah, and I think he's more polished than J.R. was at the same part of his career. Shifting gears a bit to the rest of the NBA, there are a few other big things that happened this week. I am curious, what are your thoughts on kind of the whole Shannon Sharp thing with the Lakers and the Grizzlies?
I think that entire Grizzlies team is so lame, man. What's going on here? Why is Dylan Brooks talking shit to a Hall of Famer?
In a different sport.
Yeah, and one that Dylan Brooks probably wouldn't play, can't play. Dylan Brooks he's not a Hall of Famer. He sucks, and he's a fucking massive loser. And
doesn't have the brain cells to spare to play football either.
Definitely does not. Yeah, that entire situation seemed really stupid to me. Like, honestly, from all perspectives, like, I don't know why Shannon Sharp's necessarily getting involved there too, but what the fuck is Jog gets involved and like you got his dad going over. It's just so stupid.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. Like, Shannon Sharp's like putting up 405 on bench press at 54. Like, that's pretty nuts. I mean, well, the question we got to ask is who would win in a fight? No one was worried about a Dylan Brooks Shannon Sharp fight. Like, Dylan Brooks is, but there was one person involved in that scuffle who probably does have the confidence to take on Shannon Sharp, even if it's unwarranted. Who wins between Khal Drogo, aka Steven Adams, and Shannon Sharp in a fight? I know you're more of a UFC guy and a boxing guy than me, so I think your opinion is probably going to carry more weight here.
Would Shannon Sharp get his ass kicked by Steven Adams? Is that the question?
Who would win that fight?
I think Steven Adams would probably win that fight. He's bigger. He's apparently made of like steel, and he's got the reach and everything. Yeah, I would probably go with. I would go with Adams. Yeah, as strong as Shannon Sharp is. I'm not sure. Like, I feel like Steven Adams definitely knows how to fight. I'm not sure. Like, Shannon Sharp, I'm sure knows how to scrap and like wrestle and shit. But if you're just talking about like fist fight, I'm thinking Steven Adams.
That's fair. I probably agree, and he has the reach too. Also, as strong as Shannon Sharp is, 54 is 54, and it's got to be tough to manage. But yeah. So I mean, I think it seems like you're pretty sanguine about where the Knicks are, though, right? Going forward, and what's going to happen. I mean, do you expect them to come out of this stretch 500 like the next before the All-Star break?
It would require some real Thibs. We need to change a few things. Just leave it at that. Like, they're not going to get to 500 if they just keep doing this shit that they're doing. And I don't know that Thibs will be willing to make serious adjustments. He has shown more willingness to do that this year than he has in the past, so maybe I'm wrong.
I think adjustments could make them go keep it at 500 against this schedule? I mean, what adjustments are
Yes.
there?
Like,
No, I know what there are adjustments he can make, but that are going to be impactful in making sure they don't go like worse than 5-10.
the team is good. Like, I don't like they've got 2 fucking all-stars on the team. Like, why is it so crazy to think that they could go 5? Like, I'm not even saying they need to go 500 this stretch.
I mean, the
Which is-
Wizards also have 2 all-stars on their team. I would argue. I think KP's been playing at that level.
I mean, KP also misses a bunch of games. Things out again tonight. Like, Randall and Brunson aren't missing games. You know, like they're there every night. He has quickly most nights.
Only passing reads, but yeah.
He has quickly. He has Grimes. He's got RJ playing at a probably close to career best level offensively. Like he's got talent here. I'm sorry. I'm not giving him this bailout. He's not getting it from me.
I'm not asking for a bailout. I'm saying like, what are your realistic expectations?
Get to the All-Star break at 500.
No, get to the All-Star break. So that would require. Let's just go through. Sorry, I did go through this before, so bear with me. But that would require against Cleveland at home, Boston on the road. Cleveland at home, Boston on the road, Brooklyn technically on the road, the Lakers at home, the Heat at home, the Clippers at home, the Sixers at home, the Magic on the road, the Sixers on the road, the Jazz at home, the Nets in MSG, the Hawks on the road.
It's the NBA. It's the NBA.
I mean, do you think they can get? So that would require them out of those games to win like 4 games at least.
Yeah, I don't see what's wrong with that. They can't win 4 games. They can't go 4-6 or whatever the fuck it is. Really? Like this is we're gonna do this.
All right, it would require
now?
them to go 5-7. They'd have to get 5 wins out of that.
All right.
Well, the 12.
Okay. Let's. Okay, they should beat the Clippers.
So do you think? I don't think they're gonna beat the Cavs at home.
I'm telling you right now. Sorry, fine. I'll give you the next 3. They lose those. Fine. They should beat the Lakers. They should beat the Heat.
They will not have the best player on the floor.
That's true. You can't win a game unless you're the best player on the floor. They should beat the Lakers. They should beat the Heat. They should beat the Clippers. They should beat the Magic. They should beat the Jazz. I feel comfortable saying that. And they should beat the Hawks. That's 6 right there. Why can't they do that? Like, I really don't understand. This is a team that has the point differential of a 27 and 21 team.
So they're out right now. Their 2 best players.
They're out one guy. They're going to be out one guy for that time.
I mean, has there been an update on Quickly's health? I mean, he's supposed to get to go tomorrow.
He'll be fine. He's still listed as questionable. I doubt they did like an actual checkup on him today. He'll be fine. If he misses one more game, which we're already chalking up as a loss, let's say Quickly misses the next 3. We're chalking those up as losses anyway, right? Fine. So he's like, I don't think this is crazy. He should win. He can win. If he can't win 5 games in a stretch, then he probably is just not a good coach. Like, I'm sorry. Like, to me, it's really that simple. If he lost to the fucking Wizards, okay, that's his fault. What am I supposed to do? You can't win these games against bad teams or teams that you should beat. You went 3-1 against the Raptors. So what are we doing here? Yeah. Sorry, we're 1-3 against the Raptors. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, we can't hold them to any standard. Like this is a tough stretch. Yeah, it's a tough stretch. That's how fucking NBA season works. You're gonna have a tough stretch. If you can't win any basketball games during a tough stretch, then something's got to change. I don't know. Maybe that's the players. Maybe that's the coach. To me, it's the coach.
I do agree with you. By the way, I think I am less enthusiastic about the Lakers just because of how well LeBron is playing right now. And he always seems to have really good games at MSG. But I think they should beat the Jazz and they should beat the Hawks. Clippers, it's always tough to tell. But the Knicks have actually played the Clippers well during the Thibs era. Obviously should beat the Magic. The Heat, I'm less sure about than you, but I think there's 5 wins in there. So
I'm not sure about the Heat either. My point is like,
and part of the reason I'm not sure about the Heat is because they have a better coach.
But like, I just look. This team's talent is fine. This team has good talent, and if a coach can't like get that to happen, I'm so sick and tired of like downplaying the team's talent. I don't know why.
I'm so sick of love songs too.
I am sick of that too, but I'm really sick of downplaying the team's talent for no reason. Like, again, the team has the point differential of a 27-21 team. Brunson and Randall have played.
That
at
is fair, and I think that it often they shit on young guys, and you're leaving Obi on the fucking. I can't get over that. Like, I think I've been a little bit more measured in my Thibs criticism than you, but fucking that really, like, of all the games yesterday, I think you were the one who said it. This game against this team, when he's shooting a bazillion % from three, you're leaving Obi on the bench. That was pretty awful. I did want to talk about a potential free agent this year, might be a free agent in 2024. Recently came back, had some conciliatory comments towards the Knicks. He's a guy that you've talked about bringing back. I have a scenario in mind. If the Knicks do tank, let's say they tank, and they win the number 1 pick, they bring a skinny 7'3" guy from France. They add another 7'3" guy from Washington in free agency, and they keep Mitchell Robinson, and then they play Randall at the 2 and RJ at the 1. The ginormous Knicks lineup. That's a vision that I thought about today. That tells you how little faith they have in the Knicks going forward. But I do want to ask. I know you wrote a lot about it at the time. KP came back, and the Wizards won. And even after that game, he talked about how much he missed his time in New York. Talked about saying things he could have done differently. I think he specifically alluded to the tweet he had, like right after he joined. He said, that was not a wise decision. Have your thoughts on KP changed since, we were all kind of at his throat after he left?
Not really. I mean, he fucked up, so it is what it is. I don't I don't actively hate him that much anymore because I don't really think about him. But
I don't think about you at all.
Yeah, no, it's exactly what it is. I don't really think about him. So, if he came back, I wouldn't be like, it's not at the point now where it's like, no, he can't come back. Fuck that guy. He's been gone now for what, 40 years? So,
I mean, do you think there's some truth to? So, one, I think I would love to have him back because when he was on the team, who was the guy that a lot of people wanted to? I don't know if you were on this bandwagon, but
the Julius Randle one.
Yeah, everyone wanted to pair him with Julius Randle, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you bring him back, it raises an interesting question because I'm not sure there's enough usage to go around.
Yeah, and I mean, what do you do with Mitch at that point, right? And do you want KP as your full-time 5? It's a tough thing to manage, but I mean, I don't know. Reflecting on that time, I wonder how much of our rage was really about KP and how much was it about the Howard Becks of the world, that tried to clown us incessantly about that. And if you just remove those,
my thing was
he had a shitty tweet. But the core of the issue is the Knicks didn't want to pay for a guy with injury issues, which was the right decision. And when you put it like that, really what was upsetting us was the Ringer and all that shit, and Howard Beck.
Yeah, Bondi. I mean, I just thought it was a good trade for the Knicks, to be honest. So, the emotional part of it was one thing, but just on the surface, I thought it was a good trade. So
you thought it was a good trade at the time too, right?
Yeah, I thought it was a good trade. I thought, they bet that KP was probably not going to be an all-NBA guy, which they were right about. They used his contract, or basically used him as an asset to unload bad contracts that they had, which
and still got a couple picks back.
Yeah, they got back to first. They basically, for the first time ever, reset the Knicks' entire cap sheet. Like, there was no bad money left on the books.
And for everyone that wants to say that, I also think there's a lot of people who simultaneously say that was a failure because they didn't sign KD, and also are like, look how good Julius Randle is. Well, they got Julius Randle with that cap space, right? So
yeah, and I mean
and Morris, who turned it quickly. So
yeah, they did fine with the cap space. Probably not it's not the best they could have done, but they did okay with it. And I don't know. I liked that trade at the time. I felt that way at the time. I got a lot of people that were saying that I was just coping. I don't think that was the case. Turned out pretty okay for the Knicks. Seems like it's turned out well for KP, at least at the end of it all in Washington. But I don't know. It doesn't seem like... It definitely seems like he wants to come back, or at least at the very minimum, it feels like he regrets not staying in New York. Before we wrap up, I do want to go back to the Knicks for a little bit because I do think we need to talk about Jalen Brunson, who has been really fucking good this year, but of late has struggled. I thought yesterday he was.
That was his
Why-
worst game of the season. I would legitimately say that.
Last 2 games have been fucking brutal for me watching him. His defense is just so unfocused right now. Just like
Well, he can't. He's missing very. He missed Sims a lot of times on lobs. There were a lot of opportunities for that. There was even one where he had an assist to Obi where he kicked it out for above the arc, and Obi was on fire. But I was like, he had Sims on the lob, So
yeah, and he's a good lob passer. He was hitting Mitch for a bunch early this season.
and I think
but,
the Toronto
that stopped.
the lengths. I would say the Toronto length bothered him if this was the first instance, but it's been to your point, a recurring issue the last few games.
Yeah, and it's weird because he had that awesome game against Toronto in Toronto a couple weeks ago, and then the last 2 games against them, he's really struggled. I thought the last time we played them, it was more of like a 1 partially decision making, and then 2 just second game of a back to back, playing a lot of minutes. Thought that hurt him, but like yesterday, I thought was really just bad. Like he constantly made bad decisions. He kept driving into the paint against the zone. Yeah, by the way, another reason, like, I just don't understand people that, like, there are people who will be like, well, the Knicks don't play well against zone because they don't have guys that shoot. And it's like, dude, they didn't play well against zone last year and they had a bunch of guys that could shoot. They
have guys that can shoot this year. That's not especially with Mitch out. Like, they played bad with, like, Brunson can shoot. Randall can shoot.
And it's
Fournier
also
Fournier played 21 fucking minutes. He can shoot.
And it's just to me that, like,
the worst shooter in their rotation that isn't a center went 4 of 6 from 3 yesterday. So that wasn't the issue,
Yeah, I mean, I just think that they don't attack zones properly. And, like, at a certain point when you've shuffled through
shit you
as
learn
many,
in fucking 5th grade youth basketball.
It's as soon the fact that you've shuffled through as many different players as you have over the last 3 years and the same exact issue persists. I mean, Nate McMillan had a quote after the game on Friday where he said something like, "Oh, we went to zone because we figured that would slow them down." And it's like, yeah, like it does, because we have no fucking. Every time we see a zone, it's like it takes us like 10 seconds to even figure out what the hell we're gonna do against it, and then it usually ends up some terrible shot. Like, I don't know. I think that says something about coaching. Anyway, Brunson's way to handle it yesterday was odd. It was like he just kept trying to split the kind of like 2 guys at the top of the zone and get into the middle of the paint. But he kept putting himself in like terrible situations and turning it over or nearly getting stripped. And he was all over the place yesterday. I thought he had a terrible game. He's had a terrible little stretch here. And like, I know that he's been carrying a crazy load, but he's not making it any easier on himself with some of the decisions he's making, where he's just not moving the ball. He's not passing it. I mean, I don't know how many assists he ended up with last night, but like, these guys, him and Julius especially is the case, but like him especially for the last few games, like, just do a better job of trusting your teammates, man. Like, that's like, you've got to trust these guys to make plays. And I gotta say this, I just once, when he does that little DHO with quickly, I just once want to see him actually pass it off to him. Just once. I want to see him do it instead of, like, bro, everybody's sitting on it now. It's like you're not faking anybody because they know that you're not going to give it to him, and you're just trying to drive baseline. Just fucking do it. Like, give him the ball. Let's see what happens. He's got to find a better balance. I think he will. He was there earlier in the season. Like, it's a little stretch. Everybody has stretches that suck, but I mean, look,
but it has been a direct contributor to some of the Knicks losses of late, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, the Atlanta game, he was okay. He had 9 assists in that game. They generally move the ball better the last 2 games.
But I think, like, he's so good, and you've mentioned this before, he's so good at that mid-range floater that he passes up the lob a lot. I think that's a big issue. Like, when he gets into the paint, you want him taking that floater, but like defenses are adjusting, right? And they're like, sit on the floater, and then by the time that he realizes that, oh, you're sitting on it, I can get the lob.
Yeah, that one doesn't really bother me as much. I don't think it's that's the big. To me, it's when you're missing open shooters. He's just missing open shooters constantly. I mean,
but I mean on those
Grimes is open. Grimes is open all the time. He's open. Like, I'm not even joking. If I was like Thibs and this was actually possible by the CBA, I would fine guys for not passing to Grimes when he's open. That should be automatic feed. I don't care what he shot yesterday from 3. Like, that's an automatic feed. If he's open from 3, he gets the ball.
You got to make him run laps. That's the
something. But it's a joke. Like he's done this way too much. He's missing a lot of guys, but he's really missing Grimes a lot.
But I mean,
Randall's
on the
missing a
lobs,
bunch.
the thing is that like against Toronto, those lobs, at least when he misses them, they turn into like 10-foot Jalen Brunson pull-up shots, which is a very good outcome for a Knicks offensive possession. Yesterday, like they were sitting on it, so he couldn't even take that shot.
Yeah, I mean they did
That's
really
what
good.
kills. And then he has to bail on the possession, which
Well, yeah, he's just spending a lot of time on the ball, and he's got to get it moving side to side. To his credit, I thought he did a better job in terms of like overall running the offense yesterday, but the stretches where he decided like it was time for him to initiate or get something going at least, I just thought he struggled. But like the Knicks as a team moved the ball pretty well yesterday. I think he deserves credit for that. They had 30 assists on 40 made field goals, I believe. Like they did do a good job collectively, and I do think that, and they did a good job collectively for the most part against Atlanta also. So like I do think I don't want to say he's growing because it's like, he's finding a better balance again, I think. But like, can it be better? Yeah. And I do think it needs to be better. And I do think the Knicks need to pass more. And that falls on him, and that falls on Randall, and it falls on RJ too. Like RJ had a really good passing game yesterday. He had 5 assists. Like he should be averaging 4 or 5 assists a game. Period. End of story. Like he has too much gravity as a driver to not be averaging that as far as I'm concerned.
yeah, I agree.
So yeah, look, I just think Brunson's got to find a better balance, and RJ's scoring. He's, for me, the last 25 games or so, he's been really, really taking a massive efficiency leap, and I do think he's going to get there. Like I think this last 25 games is actually indicative of the player he's probably becoming, but like the passing needs to get. That's the big thing for him offensively. He doesn't. I don't think he's ever going to be a particularly great pull-up shooter at any range, but like, given his driving talent, if he can play make at a higher level, which should be easy because of the gravity he commands, like he can be a really dynamic second, third guy in an offense, even though he's not the most explosive player. And then like defensively, he's just got to be more physical. It's just I don't really understand it. Him and Brunson are like super physical guys who seem to lack it at times on defense. And then just some of their awareness at times is like, they both love to go under screens for absolutely no reason and die on the screen and then take way too long to get over it. There's multiple instances of that the last few games and throughout the season. Like both those guys got to be better, because like, I'll say this, I've criticized Julius a lot. I actually thought Julius's defense the last couple of games have been okay, like pretty okay.
He was. I mean, it's besides boxing out. Yeah, I mean, he hasn't been the issue.
I mean, the boxing out with him is that's always going to be a thing. Like he's 28 now, right? So I don't think it's reasonable to expect him to all of a sudden become some box out master. But like, that's to me the thing with Art. It's like RJ's 22. There's like, you're still in the development phase, right? Like that you're not done. So I'm worried about him defensively, but I still have hope, because like I don't think what he did 2 years ago is gone. Like I don't think he's going to be a lockdown defender, but he's definitely capable of being a more disruptive one than he is right now. He's definitely capable of being more physical. And he just needs to find that balance better. And like, I think Omar's brought this up in our Discord, but like, look, he's obviously taken on a bigger offensive load the last couple of seasons. And is he in good condition? Yeah, I think he's in good condition, but there's a difference in being in like the condition to handle the usage he's on versus like handling that usage and still being a competitive, highly competent team defender that's able to disrupt guys. Like the shape you have to be in for that, sometimes it takes guys a few years to really like understand what it takes, right? I mean, people love talking about Jason Tatum, and I don't think RJ's going to ever be Jason Tatum, but like Jason Tatum the talent's always been there, right? Which has kind of been like why the conversation around him the last couple of years was like, what's going on with him? Why isn't he making the leap that we all thought he was going to make? It looks like he's making, I don't want to say he's made the leap to an MVP level player, because the MVP race this year is pretty between Jokic, Luka, Embiid, whatever the fuck you want. Like, there's a lot of guys up there, and I don't know if he's quite at that level, but like, he's taken a leap to, I think, unquestioned superstardom. But it took him what? I mean, this is his 6th year in the league, I believe. So it takes time. Like, you can be the most talented dude, and you can be in the right shape, and you can work your ass off, but like, that doesn't mean you're guaranteed this stuff, and it certainly doesn't mean you're going to get there. Oh, he's 22. It's time. Like, no, it I think just let him develop. The leap he's making right now as a scorer is not insignificant. Over the last 25 games, you're talking about a guy that's averaging 22 a night, 57 true shooting, 52.7 effective field goal percentage. Like, those are significant leaps for him. Like, not, and really, that's a pretty decent number for anybody. So if that continues, like, if he maintains that for the rest of the year, that's really good. And then it's like, okay, now your next goal has to be in the shape to play the type of defense you're playing your 2nd year in the league while carrying this offensive burden. And please go get me 3, 4, 5 assists a night. Or maybe he's already doing 3, but 4 or 5 assists a night. That's basically, you're talking about making like probably 3, 4 extra reads a game. That's such low hanging fruit for him. He's got to get there. I think he will get there, but I get frustrated with him quite often. But like, when you zoom out and you kind of look at his season in totality, I do think that he's making a leap that we would have probably all signed up for at the start of the year.
Done with RJ, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it a leap, but he's been better. I mean, from an efficiency standpoint, it's still kind of what it is. So, he's at he's broken the 20. He's established himself over the 20-point barrier. 3 assists a game, 2.4 turnovers, but his true shooting is still 50. It is a career high true shooting. So I think we can squabble about quabble. we can maybe I wouldn't call it a leap, but I think he's been better for sure. And I will note that he's shooting on corner threes just 34%, despite being a 37% shooter from the corner for his career. I expect that to tick up. So there's probably there's some low hanging fruit that he hasn't even capitalized on yet. So
he's shooting 40% on above the break threes right now.
Right. Yeah. So I think he is a good corner 3-point shooter. So he's just not shooting well from the corner. Maybe that above the break number comes down too. But I would imagine he's at 33% from 3. I would imagine that finishes closer to 35, 36. And I think league average efficiency at the end of this year is probably within reach for RJ. So
that's 57, right? True shooting.
For is that average? Or I thought it was closer to 55, but
I can check right now.
It may also. I mean, for a wing, you also would imagine it's going to be a little bit lower, right? Because that 57 is going to include, centers who only dunk and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at just wings, right, it's probably much higher than just the, or it's probably lower rather than the league average. So, yeah. Look, I don't know. We'll see. I do think he's made I don't want to say substantial leap, because I don't think it's a substantial overall leap, but I do think the scoring leap he's made
progress.
I would say that there's been a scoring leap, not maybe in terms of the volume you want to see ideally for a wing, but like, I don't really care about
and
that.
I will say that floater is not automatic, but he has a reliable mid-range floater. He doesn't have
which is a huge
pull-up. Yeah, which is a pretty big deal.
So for wings this season, so for small forwards, league average true shooting is 57.5, and then for shooting guards, it's 56.6. So he's over the last 25 games, he's right around. He's basically splitting the difference between 2 and 3 of league average true shooting, which, given the volume, I think that's pretty good. Especially since he's a starter, that's a good thing. And
how much do you buy into the idea that he doesn't fit well with Randall and Brunson?
I think it's a little clunky. I don't know if he doesn't. I think I would say not all three of them are going to be on the Knicks team that is competitive, contending, however you want to phrase that. But for now, I think it's fine.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a good place to end it. All right. That's our pod for today. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Stacy, let the people know where they can find you and plug anything that you'd like to plug.
Yeah, you can find me at StacyPatton89. I want to bring up this fun fact. The Dallas Cowboys, who everyone told me had the greatest quarterback, not everyone, analytics folks. I'm not an anti-analytics person, but in this case I will. They told me they had the greatest quarterback of all time. The Dallas Cowboys have not won a playoff game on the road in over 30 years. So in essence, the majority of the Knicks, even Julius Randle, shout out Dallas's finest, have not been alive to see the Dallas Cowboys win a road playoff game. And I wanted to highlight that and plug that. Aside from that, Presidente just did a great article on shot making for the Strickland, which I'll plug. Honestly, like I've learned about basketball probably as much from that guy as anyone else, and it's a really good article, both from kind of a draft perspective as well as just our players, and we do have a lot of young players, so I will plug that.
Yeah. I would also plug everything that Prez does, even though he sucks. I'm not going to plug anything about
But Prez has, especially when his draft Strickland is good. His other podcast, he has a shitty partner, but
it's true.
The draft Strickland ones, that's the one to keep an eye out for.
The Cowboys also haven't made the NFC Championship game in 28 years now. So
you know who is in the NFC Championship game this year?
Yeah, the Niners.
The Eagles too. But
yeah. All right, nobody cares about that. Not on this podcast, anyway. All right.
I think we can draw a truce and say fuck the Cowboys. Shout out to Giants, and also I'll say this: if there's any Giants fans that are blaming what happened on Saturday on Daniel Jones, that is a massive overreaction. That was just
they weren't supposed to be there. They got pounded by.
They weren't supposed to be there. They're outgunned. I think they're going to be much better next year. I think they will. I think Jacoby Myers is a good name to keep an eye on. I think that's a really good fit for them. So the Giants are definitely worrisome for other NFC East teams right now, and there's no reason to be too disheartened by that loss, even though suck it. And both sentiments can be true.
I concur. All right. I have nothing to plug, so I'm just going to plug all the work at the Strickland, the pods, the Run.Down with Sam and Tyrese and Jeff. They all do a great job on there, except for Tyrese. All the draft Stricklands, draft work, checked all that out. So that, again, is our pod for today. Hope everybody has a great week, and I will see you on Friday.